Good morning. I'm Dr. Gloria Richard Davis. I'm the Executive Director for the Division for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences. I'm also a professor in the Department of OBGYN and Program Director for our Culinary Medicine program. I'd like to thank Dr. Maria Small and the NMA OBGYN section for the invitation and opportunity to present to you on such a critical topic. Food as best medicine, paving our way to health with our forks. I grew up in South Louisiana, which is the heart of Cajun Creole country. And the one thing that we're known for is good food, good, rich food. And I now live in Arkansas. What the two states have in common is really that we have some of the worst health statistics in the nation. And it largely links back to poor health food choices. So I would like to start sharing my slides with you so we can begin to have further discussions on food, the best medicine, paving the way to health with our forks. So our learning objectives for this session is we're going to define culinary medicine, recognize the role that nutrition plays in health, identify the key aspects of a healthy eating pattern, recognize there are many different diets ranging from the standard American diet that we refer to as SAD to the whole food plant-based diet. We're going to cover the barriers to healthy eating and how to overcome them. And the concept of food as medicine is not new. It really dates back to Hippocrates' time when he said, "Let food be thy medicine shall be thy food." It really speaks to the fact that we are what we eat. So at our UMS Culinary Medicine program, our motto is we are cooking for a better state of health. And we really take this motto to heart. Our mission is to educate our campus, our communities statewide, so that they understand the importance of healthy food choices as it relates to chronic disease prevention and chronic disease management. So we are cooking for a better state of health. So let's talk a minute about what culinary medicine means. It really is an evidence-based field of medicine which blends the art of food and cooking with the science of medicine. It's a relatively new field. We're using food to live healthier and fight chronic diseases by making health-promoting foods more palatable, affordable, easy to prepare, accessible, the first tool clinicians reach for themselves and for their patients. So we're very intentional on teaching our students and teaching our residents so that they will in fact incorporate this into their own lifestyle, and hopefully that will translate into them educating or being better able to educate their patients. My relationship with food started in my college years when I took the nutrition course when I was at Harvard. My professor was Dr. Jean Mayer, who was the presidential advisor on nutrition. He subsequently became the president of Tufts, and they named the USDA Human Nutrition Research Center on Aging after him. So he really was a pioneer and at the forefront of leading research and the relationship to foods and diseases, disease prevention. The curriculum that we use in our culinary medicine program, we have we purchased the rights to through the Gold Ring Center of Culinary Medicine at Tulane. It's a very robust curriculum. It has 32 plus modules, which really focuses on the basics of culinary medicine and almost every disease that you can imagine that you can address prevention and disease management through foods. We were very fortunate. We had a very generous donor who allowed us to renovate a space in our Institute on Aging that we converted to a teaching kitchen. And this is a picture of our reception. We opened last October, and you see our provost, Dr. Stephanie Gardner, our first elected Black mayor, Mr. Scott, and my other colleagues who are with me in the culinary medicine program. This is what the kitchen looks like. We have 10 cooking stations. We have induction burners in each. We have ovens in the back, lots of storage and prep area. And we also have a demonstration table that we use as we go out into the community or when we bring the community into our space. So we can accommodate up to 20 people very safely in the kitchen and comply with our COVID protocol. So the National Academy of Science recommends 25 hours of nutrition education. And what we know is that many of our medical schools fall short of that. The average medical student receives less than 20 hours of contact hours of nutrition instructions. And only 27% of 105 medical schools meet the minimum 25 hours required. Only 30% of primary care doctors even discuss nutrition with their patients. And so that really just underscores the lack of knowledge and comfort with talking about nutrition with patients. So our culinary medicine elective for our seniors is designed to deliver 24 hours of nutrition education in an 8-week longitudinal flipped classroom course. And by that, we mean the didactic portion of our course is delivered online, and we deliver this to 2 cohorts per semester. We repeat the same modules for each group, starting out with safety and sanitation and the introduction to culinary medicine, talk about weight management, portion control, fats, good, the bad, the ugly as it relates to fats, food allergy and intolerance, because there are more and more people who are being diagnosed with food allergies. The next module is on proteins, amino acid, vegetarian diets, and eating disorder. So it really covers a lot of it's an array of things that we cover in that module, but really focusing on how important proteins and amino acids are. And if you follow a vegetarian diet or you have some eating disorder, we want to make sure that you get adequate protein. The sodium, potassium, and hypertension module, as you can imagine, is really talking about things like the DASH diet, dietary approach to stopping hypertension as we address the consumption of sodium and potassium related to hypertension control. And then in the carbohydrate module, we do talk specifically about carbohydrates, the simple carbohydrates versus complex carbs, and the significance that it has to diabetes control and prevention. And then lastly, the module that we included is on geriatrics diet, because that's the fastest growing segment of our population. So we wanted to make sure that we talk to our students who will be going out into primary care residency, and other areas where they will definitely be interacting with our older population. So here are some pictures of the students in our kitchen. You can see they're very engaged, preparing dishes, and our dishes are selected. They align with the modules that we teach, the 8 modules that I just referenced earlier. And so we go into the kitchen, we cook. At the end of our cooking session, which is amazing, we sit and we really enjoy the fruits of our labor. We incorporate in our discussion mindfulness in the way that we eat. So we want to talk about the food texture, appreciating the savory, smelling the aroma. So being in the present as you enjoy the meal that you have prepared. We also talk about motivational interviewing, and really that addresses how we meet patients where they are, and we help to move them towards healthier choices, healthier lifestyle choices. This is a workshop that we did, and it was nutrition and cancer prevention. We had a nutritionist from North Carolina who really focuses on cancer prevention. She presented the didactic portion. We had oncologists and primary care docs from the community who came in, and very similar to what we do with our students. We had the didactic portion. We went into the kitchen, we prepared dishes, and then we engaged in conversation as we enjoyed our meals and talked about the choices of dishes that we prepared and the characteristics of those dishes as it relates to cancer prevention, antioxidants, right, anti-inflammatory foods. More pictures, love it. I tell you, it is amazing to me to see the skills that, or lack of skills, I should say, that the students come into our class with. And at the end of the 8 weeks, how comfortable they are and how comfortable they are having conversations related to foods. So I'm really pleased with what we have been able to provide to our students. Let's talk a minute about the leading causes of death in the US. And certainly we're all familiar with the fact that cardiovascular disease, heart and circulatory disease is the #1 killer. In our communities, we have disproportionate incidence of cardiovascular disease. Next, followed by cancer, again, still disproportionately impacted in Black communities. And as you go down the line, you can see other disorders that are directly linked to poor eating habits, poor lifestyle, like kidney disorder, infections. So we can have a significant impact on disease prevention and reduction in premature death based on educating our patients on nutrition and healthier eating habits. I want to just mention the obesity trends. We're all familiar with the fact that we have an obesity epidemic in the United States. In 2019, you can see that we had some states that were in the 20 to 30% incidence of obesity. Arkansas, Louisiana, Georgia, Alabama, we all are in good company. We're more in the 50 to 60% range. As we project forward to 2030, what we see is that the obesity trend is not going in the right direction. It is worsening. And so the projection is that by 2030, 39 states will have over 50% obesity rates. And again, as you can see, the Southeast states are leading the pack. So if we don't do anything to stymie this trend, we will be spending extraordinary healthcare dollars on treating the complications of obesity. And obesity is associated with over 60 comorbidities. It's the usual suspect: hypertension, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, cancer, dyslipidemia. But it's also associated with sleep apnea, depression, GERD, some of the things that we don't necessarily think of as associated with obesity. The other non-alcoholic fatty liver, we're seeing an increase in incidence, again, correlating to increase in obesity. And for us in the field of reproductive medicine, polycystic ovarian syndrome is very common, which I always say to my patients is like a pre-diabetic state, leads to female infertility because of the anovulatory disorder. That really was the impetus for my interest in starting this culinary medicine program, because I was spending extraordinary amounts of time counseling patients on lifestyle modifications, trying to help them help us to improve our pregnancy rates. It's important to know that obesity is an inflammatory condition. And the visceral fat really acts as an endocrine organ secreting pro-inflammatory adipocytes, cytokines, and the release of those cytokines damages cells in all of our organ systems, which contributes to the development of various diseases like cardiovascular, diabetes, chronic kidney disease, cancer, and the list goes on. If we do nothing to reduce the impact of the inflammatory process, it continues to escalate, and we're more likely to see things like physical disability. This is now the downstream ramification of these chronic diseases, cognitive disability, and ultimately premature mortality. There is a new science known as metabesity, and they really are focused on how do we reverse the inflammatory process of obesity, reduce the impact, and have longer life. When we look at chronic diseases in adults who are over 65, 80% of our adults have at least one chronic condition. 68% have two or more chronic conditions. So again, that just underscores the impact that we can have in either prevention or management of the disease to reduce the morbidity and mortality. 58% of over 65 have hypertension, high cholesterol, 47%, ischemic heart disease, 30%. There was a recent article I was reading which really was disconcerting for me, and it was talking about women in the 20 to 40 year age range and the percentage of those women who have underlying heart disease that's undiagnosed. Very concerning. And of course, we know that that relates to our obesity. About 30% of Black patients have chronic kidney disease. We did a program at one of the local churches that was funded through our Links chapter, so our Links Central area, and Baxter Pharmaceutical, raising chronic kidney disease awareness in our community because of the high incidence and the fact that many of these individuals end up on dialysis and few of them get referred to transplant from our Black communities. So it was really an impactful program, and we incorporated 4 modules from our culinary medicine program and delivered it to about 75 individuals at this church. This is a really interesting TED Talk, and I encourage you to listen to it. It's Lieutenant General Mark Hertling, who is talking about obesity as a national security issue. I would never have even conceptualized this. But what he talks about is, as they're out here trying to recruit younger adults to enroll or to engage in military service, there is a large portion who don't qualify. About 70% of the troops, he said, don't qualify. And that's very concerning. And those that do qualify, of the 25% who qualify, due to obesity, 60% of them could not pass a PT test. They couldn't do 1 minute of push-up, 1 minute of sit-up, or a mile run. And of course, he speaks to the contributing factors like removal of physical education in our schools, so we're less physically active. We are much more engaged with technology, so we move less. And our kids are spending a lot of time with games and computers. So again, less movement. And compound that with poor nutrition, we eat and consume an excess of sugar and fats. And he talks about the O food group. O meaning anything that ends in O is not healthy. So you can see the nacho chips, the Oreos, Doritos, here's our nachos, here's our Fritos. So really, anything ending in O as part of this food group, we should be just saying no to, as Nancy Reagan would say. I also said to our patients that nothing white should cross your lips, because if you are consuming white rice, white pasta, white bread, then those are simple carbohydrates. They tend to increase your insulin stimulation and really direct more of those calories towards fat. If you consume complex carbohydrates, your insulin level is much more stable and you have less of an issue of those calories being shifted to fats. So our standard American diet, we know, is not good. We consume way too many sugars, processed foods. And so you can see some of the items, the cereal that we consume, the noodles, what is it that the college students eat, the Roman noodles. Here's our O's, our nachos. So a lot of things, fast foods, that's not healthy. And up here in this right corner is really where our healthy options reside. This should be the base of our diet if we're really going to focus on eating healthy. So this is data from the CDC Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance System, where they surveyed a number of people about their vegetable and fruit consumption. And what they found that a large percentage of Americans consume less than one serving of vegetables per day. All of the states that are in this dark blue color, the residents consume 20 to 50% of the residents consume less than one vegetable per day. And the same thing holds true for fruit consumption, less than one per day. Here we are, Arkansas, Louisiana, Georgia's not too far behind, right? So we really want to focus on increasing the servings of vegetable and fruits that individuals eat per day, because we know that when we talk about the Mediterranean diet and any healthy diet, that really is the base of healthy food choices. So here's our Mediterranean pyramid, and this is the base of our culinary medicine curriculum. We talk to our students about, again, choosing foods from the vegetable, fruit, and multigrain cereal groups. And that should really be the base of what you eat every day. Less often, you can add fish and shrimp, and even less often, like weekly portions, is poultry, eggs, cheese, yogurt, the dairy products, and occasionally adding that red meat and sweets. You notice that the base here is the emphasis on increasing physical activity. The recommendation is at least 150 minutes per week of physical activity, and the consumption of water. It's important that we consume 8 or more 12 ounces of water, because one of the things that we know is that our satiety, our hunger center, will sometimes misinterpret thirst for hunger. So you really want to stay hydrated. It also helps to make you feel fuller. I love the fact that wine is, in fact, part of the Mediterranean diet. So I don't have any guilt about consuming wine, and especially red wine. It's great to consume 1 to 2 glasses per day. The men can have 2, the women can have 1. And one of our students the other day asked, well, why is that included in the Mediterranean diet? And I shared with him that the resveratrol in red wine is an antioxidant. And so it is anti-inflammatory. So here's the dietary spectrum that we see in the US. We go from what the average American eats to what is, the whole food plant-based eating plan. Now, most of our patients are somewhere in here. And what we do in our culinary medicine class whether it's with our students, our residents, or our patients, we talk to them about how we meet them where they are, and we help them to transition to healthier food choices. We may never get them to whole food, plant-based eating. Even I still consume some meats, but we want to work towards reducing the servings of meat and processed and sweets that we consume. Because we know when we talk about the Mediterranean diet, we have a wealth of publications or evidence-based information in our literature that supports the benefits of the Mediterranean diet. I also want to note that when you look historically at our ancestors, whether it was the Latin American, African heritage, or Asian diets, you see that all of those diets, the base of it was still very similar to what we consider to be the Mediterranean diet, and that is fruits, vegetables, multigrain. As you look across each one of those, much less likely to consume those meats, right? And the sweets were only occasionally. And when we think about the history of how we ate, our registered dietitian talks about the fact that, meats were considered celebration foods. We had it for special occasions. We didn't have it every day. We really only had it in certain seasons. And we progressed then to having it with our Sunday dinner in our Black communities. And now we're at a point where we are really expecting to have meats every day, almost every meal. And that's just not healthy. So we do need to reduce the consumption. So there's the whole health resource, which really approaches health from a holistic perspective. It's beyond just what you eat and drink. It's also all the other things. It's our body, mind, and soul connection. So it's important to be mindful, to live in the presence, to look at how we reduce stress, because certainly the chronic tonic release of cortisol with racism, we're all at risk. So how do we reduce that? We know that relationships are important in reducing our stress and improving our sense of well-being, as well as our spirituality. So our self-care circle really involves all of those things. Clinical care should wrap around that. We should be encouraging patients to practice self-care, and same is true for our community. Culinary medicine is that bridge between whole health and what is known as lifestyle medicine. So there is a certification in lifestyle medicine, and my colleague in the culinary medicine program is certified. We have a couple of our family medicine docs that are seeking that certification. So we're going to launch a lifestyle medicine curriculum for our family planning residency program. As you can see, a lot of what is in this whole health model is also in healthy lifestyle. So we still have the base, healthful eating, physical activity, managing stress, as we talked about, attending to our relationships, maintaining healthy relationships, making sure that you get adequate sleep. And many of us don't. So really paying attention to your sleep pattern and sleep hygiene, and reducing tobacco use, so tobacco cessation. So all of those things contribute to healthy lifestyle, reduction in chronic diseases, and longevity. So our literature is very rich in evidence-based publications that says the Mediterranean diet is equal to a medical prescription. So when we talk about Mediterranean diet, we're talking about those foods that we spoke to that are rich in antioxidants, that have anti-inflammatory properties, that reduces the damage to our cells. So that includes olive oil, vegetables, fruits, legumes, nuts, red wine, whole grains. If you consume whole grain, it increases your energy expenditure. So not by increasing your exercise, but you should, but just simply by healthy food choices, you can increase your energy expenditure. We know that the Mediterranean diet is linked to a decreased risk of chronic diseases such as cardiovascular disease, obesity, hypertension, the usual suspect. We also know that if you bump up your Mediterranean score by just 2 points, you reduce your risk of cardiovascular disease by 20%. So hence saying the Mediterranean diet is comparable to pharmacological intervention, because you can probably do away with the excessive use of statins if we just were able to convince our patients and ourselves, really, to follow a healthy diet. We know there are genetic predispositions to some of those, but a lot of it we control as well, right? So some of the key points I want to leave you with is culinary medicine is an evidence-based field, blending the art of food and cooking with the science of medicine. We know the US has an obesity epidemic, and it really is incumbent upon us as healthcare providers to stymie that increasing trend, because what we also know is that the incidence of diabetes is paralleling that incline, as are the other chronic diseases that's associated with obesity. As I mentioned, there are certainly genetic, hormonal, and other exogenous factors that contribute to weight. The things that we can't control, we have to learn how to accept. We can't, but how do we mitigate against the impact of those? We can't change our genes, but we can change our lifestyle. So think of healthy food as a lifestyle choice instead of as a diet. When we talk about dieting, that's usually something that comes and goes. And we know that most diets fail. We don't stick with it. It's not sustained. We're not consistent. And if you talk about diets to lose weight, that most people regain that weight right back. But if you do a reasonable, a sensible lifestyle choice with reducing calories, you can reduce calories by 500 per day. That's the equivalent of 3,500 calories per week. You lose a pound a week. If you can sustain that type of lifestyle choice, then you can certainly sustain the weight loss. We want you to be mindful when you eat, slow down, savor your foods, because that allows your satiety center to catch up to what you're putting in your stomach. If you just really quickly or you rush to eat, you will oftentimes overeat. And what we know is that it will oftentimes trigger unhealthy choices. So take the time, be mindful of what we're consuming. And healthy plant-based diet and lifestyle reduces weight gain and reduces chronic disease risk. We want to start with those small changes to what and when you eat. A sudden major overhaul are typically not sustainable and more likely to fail. You want to swap out the less healthy food choices. So we really don't talk about what you have to eliminate to begin with, but what we want you to add. And then gradually we transition patients into that conversation about the less healthy foods. But if you add healthy foods in, I guarantee you are less likely to consume those unhealthy foods. And I don't want to forget to mention the liquids that we consume, because we consume a lot of empty calories with drinks, sodas, etc. And so try to encourage yourself as well as your patients to consume more water. You can swap out, if you really just need that carbonation, then use sparkling water. Don't drink soda. And juices, people think juices are healthy, but juices have a lot of sugar in them. So it's something that you really want to limit your consumption of. Consider trying the Mediterranean diet. We talk about the blue zone, which was what was studied. They looked at where centurions live, where the greatest number of centurions lived. And they were in areas where the Mediterranean diet was consumed. So that really led to a lot of the research and evaluation of Mediterranean diet and its health-based evidence. So again, the evidence is overwhelming. Mediterranean diet is easy to maintain and it's healthy. It's also important that we ask for help. If you can work with a registered dietitian on a plan, we highly encourage that. I actually was fortunate. I had a registered dietitian that was assigned to me as I begged for help in my fertility clinic. And, you know, to add accountability and support to keep you on track. That's one of the reasons why we talk about Weight Watchers and success. It's that accountability. It's the check-in. So peer groups helps. Checking in with the registered dietitian helps. And there are more health system and insurance companies that are providing specialized nutrition resources. So ask and look for those classes and apps that you can refer your patients to, because they are very helpful. And so I hope with the information that we discussed today, this helps to stimulate your interest and your appetite to seek more information, to follow some of these recommendations yourself, and to have those conversations with your patients so that we can all work towards reducing our chronic disease, reducing our obesity epidemic, and really getting to a healthier state. As we say, we are cooking for a healthier state. And I hope that you would join us in that quest. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions.